September 9th, 2010.
We're going to need every PD officer we can to assist with evacuation.
First responders in San Bruno, California rushed to a scene unlike any they have ever experienced before.
It appears that we have a plane down in the neighborhood, multiple structures on fire, and we have a fireball still coming out.
But this wasn't a plane crash.
It is just one massive inferno.
A high-pressure underground natural gas transmission line had failed, sending a massive fireball barreling through an entire neighborhood.
It was an instantaneous, basically like a bomb going off.
Among the first to arrive on location, San Bruno Engine Company Captain Charlie Barringer.
Within 5 to 10 minutes of this, you had 30 homes that were burned to the ground. In the 25 years in the fire service, I've never seen pure fear in people's faces.
Neighbors scrambled to evacuate, running for their lives, leaving everything behind.
There was a loud noise or rumbling sound.
Including resident since 1972, Bob Hensel.
The whole house was shaking, and right after like the big bang explosion, I could hear things hitting the house.
With his wife on vacation in Germany, Hensel, a retired fire chief, was alone at the time.
And the sky was all orange. It was very, very warm, and I was having like there was no air to breathe.
That tragic night in California, 8 lives were lost, 38 homes completely destroyed, including the Hensels.
Everything was in the house was gone, the cats and everything.
The San Bruno accident was a watershed accident for the pipeline industry.
According to the NTSB, the explosion, which sent a portion of the pipe 100 feet away, occurred because of substandard welds, among other problems, dating back to 1956, when the transmission line was first installed.
So what we have here is just a little bit over a 28-foot section of the pipe.
Deborah Hirschman is the chair of the NTSB.
There was a lack of fusion in certain areas, and so the welds were substandard by today's terms and also in 1956 terms.
Raising concern for pipelines not just in California, but around the country, where nearly 1/3 of transmission lines are 40 years old or older. In fact, there are 2.5 million miles of pipelines in America, enough to circle the globe 100 times. Pipelines that often run underneath homes, schools, hospitals, and playgrounds, transporting everything from natural gas to oil to water and steam.
We don't know what the condition of the pipelines are. They're made of old cast iron or bare steel, and we just don't know, and we need to know.
Rick Kessler is the vice president of the board for the Pipeline Safety Trust, an industry watchdog group started by parents of children who were killed in the 1999 Bellingham, Washington pipeline explosion. Kessler says age is a factor in pipeline safety, but maintenance is one of his biggest concerns.
Some of these pipelines are 100 years old or close to 100 years old, but they can be maintained well, but they have to be watched more and more carefully. Conversely, you can have brand new pipeline made of the finest modern material, and if it's not inspected regularly and repaired in the correct manner, it could be a disaster as well.
Disasters like New York City saw in 2007, when a steam pipe 80 years old exploded on Manhattan's east side.
There is no reason to believe whatsoever that this is anything other than a failure of our infrastructure.
Swallowing a tow truck and leaving 45 injured.
Natural gas explosion shook Allentown, Pennsylvania overnight, leveling.
The February 2011 deadly explosion in Allentown, Pennsylvania, where among the numerous victims, a 4-month-old baby. And this Philadelphia explosion caught on camera by NBC's Philadelphia television station WCAU just 1 month earlier.
The people who live here say the explosion was so loud that they could hear it for several blocks away.
These are not isolated incidents. In fact, according to Department of Transportation records, there have been 10,483 reported pipeline incidents between 1991 and August of 2011, causing nearly 400 fatalities, 1,600 injuries, and over $5 billion in property damage.
If you look at the pipeline...
Cynthia Quarterman runs the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, a division of the Department of Transportation that oversees much of our nation's pipelines.
And your responsibility for them is exactly what? To ensure that they are safe. Are they? Well, we think so for the most part, yes.
That answer isn't very reassuring for Rick Kessler, who points to the fact the DOT has just over 100 inspectors across the entire country.
Is that ratio good enough? Well, that's the federal inspectors. There are 300 approximately state inspectors as well. One of the things that is in the legislation that the administration is supporting would increase the number of inspectors by 10 individuals for the next 4 years.
I've read that a lot of times the inspector isn't actually kicking the tires, so to speak, but just looking at paperwork to ensure, allegedly, that things were inspected. What's the breakdown from how much they're actually looking at the pipe versus looking at paperwork?
We have about 10 different kinds of inspections that are done. They look at the procedures to ensure that the procedures that they have in effect are in compliance with our regulations. They look at the reports to ensure that what is being reported actually reflects the procedures that are on their books. And then finally we do field verification where we go out to kick the pipe.
Do you know where the coating crew is?
At an installation of a new pipeline, the DOT walks us through the inspection process firsthand, which begins with the company itself that's laying down the pipeline. Carefully examining the pipe before it is buried using a process known as jeeping, workers check for any vulnerable spots on the pipe, while technicians use X-rays as another means of double-checking the condition of the pipe, all under the watchful eye of a federal inspector. But industry watchdog group Pipeline Safety Trust has harsh criticisms when it comes to these inspections.
The industry is overseeing itself, that the inspectors are just looking over the inspections that industry has done. They're not doing them themselves, and they're not able to oversee those inspections while they're happening. So really, it's a trust but not verify kind of situation we're in. Frankly, if the people who oversaw pipelines oversaw planes, I wouldn't fly.
We've invested $10 billion.
The man in charge of the DOT, Secretary Ray LaHood, has unveiled plans of his own to overhaul pipeline safety from the ground up, covering everything from new regulations to consumer awareness.
I think a real awareness, a real awakening took place after the explosion in Pennsylvania, after the explosion in California, and a lot of good reforms and opportunities have been created so that we can create an awareness with the public, with people that live in communities, with the pipeline companies, and with the people that are in charge of enforcement, including ourselves.
To what degree should Americans be worried that what happened in San Bruno, what happened in Pennsylvania, could happen in other parts of the United States?
Well, what they should know is that people at DOT that have some enforcement responsibility and people in the states and the pipeline companies have really all been talking to one another now. But we need to continue every day to do a better job to inform people, to make sure enforcement's in place, to make sure people we turn enforcement over to are doing their jobs, and to get the pipeline companies to take responsibility for repairing, replacing aging pipelines.
Have they not taken responsibility?
They are now.
Including the Gas Pipeline Association, which has recently released a 9-point action plan on pipeline safety, and PG&E, the company which owned and operated the pipe which exploded in San Bruno. They're planning to spend over $2 billion to replace 186 miles of natural gas transmission pipeline in California and conduct strength tests on 783 miles of pipe. The company president, Chris Johns, spoke with NBC's San Francisco television station KTNV following the NTSB's release of its San Bruno findings.
What we're really focused on is how can we take and learn from what the experiences are and what their facts are that they found and integrate them into now how we evaluate our pipeline and make sure that it's safe.
For the residents of San Bruno, California that are just now beginning to rebuild their homes and their lives, the news is a step in the right direction. But a step Bob Hensel believes should have been taken years ago.
People lost their life here, so if they spent the money they're spending here now, if they spent probably a tenth of that checking the pipe and, nothing would have happened, or it could have been prevented.
Up next, levees on the brink. Where they are may surprise you.
Floods will happen and levees will fail. It is simply a matter of time.
And later, putting the for lease sign up. Foreign companies investing in America's infrastructure.
The total investment was nearly $8 billion.
And
if you want construction workers rebuilding America, pass this bill.
The big fix when the race to rebuild America's infrastructure continues.